Ayana, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
I'd like to start every podcast interview by asking guests, as a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
When I was growing up, I don't really remember exactly what I wanted to be, but I did know that I wanted to do something in a creative field. My mom is a graphic designer and my dad actually has a degree in computer science. It's kind of funny that with my full-time career, I'm right in the middle. I'm actually a web designer. So I'm kind of with the creative and with the sort of more technical side. So it's actually interesting how both of my parents' influences have really come together in my professional career, I'd say.
That's awesome. So, for listeners who don't know what you do today, do you mind sharing a little bit about what you do and the role you're in today?
Yeah, for sure. I think probably the main reason why I'm on this podcast is because I actually have a business outside of my full time career. I am the founder and a debt free money coach at Millennial Money Guide. And I work with women and couples to help them get unstuck with their money so that they can ditch debt, save more, and finally start winning with it. So, yeah, I
I
started
love
that
that,
brand.
by the way.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I started that brand in, I would say, about mid 2019. It started randomly just as a side project that I was doing. And now it has grown to be a business with me being able to serve clients in different forms, whether it's coaching or speaking or being invited to do guest training. So it's been really fun.
That is so cool. Well, tell us, how did you figure out that that's what you wanted to do? Can you walk us through a little bit of that journey? Did you always know that you wanted to start a business, or did this come up as you saw a need?
Yeah, I think it definitely came up as I saw a need. And I always say, like, my business has grown very organically because, as I touched on the top of the show, I do work as a graphic designer full time. And so my degree is in that, my background is in design. And so I was really looking for some form of a creative project to devote my time to outside of my 9 to 5 that would still give me sort of a creative outlet, but not be me working 24/7 on work related things. And so my business kind of grew out of that desire. And it was really random. I was sitting down one day watching TV on the couch and I was writing a list of all these topics about personal finance because that's another sort of area of interest, obviously, that I'm very interested in,
Yeah.
even outside of the work that I do. And I wrote all these topics of what I would have wanted to learn about budgeting and saving money and negotiating for a job. And once the topics list grew to be about 30 topics, I was like, okay, this
Wow.
isn't something that I should sit on. Yeah, it was definitely like I had a lot of thoughts about about money and personal finance. And especially being a millennial, many of us don't learn about those topics
Mm.
that are so important in school or at home. And so I set out to create a project that would give me that creative outlet, but that wouldn't be super time consuming or something that I would have to give up really quickly and wouldn't be sustainable. And so I decided to start a monthly email newsletter. So that's how it all started. And at the same time, I started my Instagram. And like I mentioned, everything has really just grown so organically from there. Like I have so much fun on Instagram, and from doing that and educating people on that platform and with my newsletter, I was like, I can do so much more on an individual basis if I have a business actually doing coaching and teaching sort of strategies and tips that have really worked for me in my finances to help my
Mhm.
clients get success in that way. And so coaching kind of grew out of that. And then now getting speaking opportunities has grown out of that and just being on social media. So that's kind of a roundabout way of giving you my story, but it definitely has grown from a very sort of authentic place, I guess, if you will.
Yeah.
Nothing where I went into it thinking I was going to be a business owner, but I am really happy to be doing it. So it's been exciting.
That's awesome. It inspires me. I love meeting people who are doing work they love. That's part of the reason I started this podcast, was because I wanted to inspire and motivate people to find work that lights them up. And I can
Hmm.
see your passion comes through as you're talking about
Definitely.
that.
Yeah, for sure.
The first, get an interest in personal finance. Did start in college, because that's usually not a topic that
Yeah.
I would say most people are like, oh, I love personal finance. How did that come up for you?
I think for me, I was interested in personal finance from a personal perspective. I would say after I graduated college, because I had a goal, I really wanted to buy my first car on my own. I was
Mm.
still living at home with my parents. I had gotten my first big girl job, but I hadn't quite left the nest yet. And so I was really trying to figure out, like, what is my next step? How am I going to begin accomplishing things financially on my own? And so luckily, I was really blessed to grow up in a home where my parents really taught me the value
Mm,
of saving money and
mm,
having a budget and not living
mm.
above your means and things like that. They sat me down when I was 7 years old and they're like, okay, this is how you balance a checkbook. But it was just through their actions and their interactions that I witnessed. And then once I got to be of an age where I understood the importance of money, I think it really rubbed off on me. And then another thing to note too is that my mom, she actually, like I mentioned, she's a graphic designer, but she has her own business too. She has a graphic design business. And so my story just really just comes together because when I was younger, like even in middle school, I was actually helping her with client projects at that young age
Oh,
and
cool.
understanding that if you work, you can earn money and then you can use money to buy the things that you want, the shoes at the mall or going shopping with
Mm,
your friends. And so I would say I definitely learned the value of a dollar at a young age. But when it came to actually managing money, I think the biggest sort of push for me was when I got engaged in 2015. And I realized that there is so much more outside of planning the wedding because I did all the work of having a wedding budget and all these other things, but I forgot about what comes after moving out of your parents' house and furnishing an apartment and managing finances with a partner. And so I think that from there was when I was really like, okay, personal finance is super exciting and interesting, but I don't know what I'm doing completely. And so I really dove into educating myself. And then from there, once I educated myself, I was like, so many more people need this information and this knowledge. And so that's
mm,
where Millennial Money Guide was born from there, from that desire to share that
mm.
information.
Well, how did you start educating yourself? Did you just start Googling? Did you like go to courses? How did
Mhm.
you start learning more about it?
Yeah, so I would say that I am definitely enrolled in YouTube University. I spent a lot of time on YouTube. I read a lot of books and I spent a lot of time on Reddit forums and just forums online. So that was really my formal, if you will, education for personal finance. And then a lot of things I did learn from my parents as far as managing money well too. It was a lot of different resources. Personal finance, at the end of the day, I really feel like there are a set of principles and guidelines and strategies that work. It just really depends on you figuring out which of these sort of things work for you and creating your own plan. And so once you get the basics, I think it becomes a lot easier. But for
Mm.
many people, having that basic knowledge is really the starting point that they're missing.
So if someone's listening and is thinking, I really would love to start becoming better with my money, what are the kind of things
Mhm.
that you would like to tell the person listening?
I always tell anyone that wants to get better with their money is that before you can create a plan for improving your finances, is important that you understand your starting point. Many of us, we have no idea how much debt we have, how much money we actually have in savings, how much we should have for an emergency fund, how much we're actually spending, and how that would inform a budget. And so, the very first step that I recommend to anyone that asks me, whether it's a client or someone in my DMs on Instagram, is before you can create a budget, before you can create a spending plan, before you can create a debt payoff strategy, you need to audit your spending and see where your money is going now so that you
Mm,
can then figure out what changes need to be made, what things you're doing well, what things need
mm,
improvement. So it sounds like a very simple thing, but I think it's often something that's overlooked. And that's
mm,
why many times I feel like when you're trying to create a budget or you're trying to create a plan for paying down your debt, it feels very overwhelming or it feels like you're taking two steps forward and one step back. It's because you don't have that solid foundation of really understanding
mm,
where you're starting to make sure that you're making the best moves for yourself and getting you to the point where you want to be.
mm. I love that you shared that. It made me think of when I was first out of college,
Mhm.
my
Uh-huh.
first job. I felt like I wasn't making enough money to do certain things. I had a
Mhm.
decent salary and I can't remember the name of the website now, but it was like a women's website where you could send in all your information and they came up with a plan. And what she told me was that you're actually making more than enough money to meet these goals you have. And
Mhm.
so what I actually found was that I had a lot of money left over, but I just didn't realize that I hadn't taken the time to really understand where am I? What do I have?
Yeah.
And so I love that you shared that because it does seem simple. And I think if you'd asked me at that point, do I understand where I am financially? I would have said,
Mhm.
yeah, I have this much in debt. I need to make more money. But
Mhm. Yeah,
the
exactly.
reality was that I was making enough money for my goals. I just didn't have the greatest understanding of it all.
Yeah, that completely makes sense. Yeah, I think that's the common thing that I really see. It's like whenever I work with a client and they come to me and they say that they feel like they're living paycheck to paycheck. I
Mhm.
always ask them, I
Yes.
was like, are you literally living paycheck to paycheck, or do you just feel like you're living paycheck to paycheck because you don't actually know where your money is going and what your income is versus your expenses? Because
Mm,
many times, and I definitely don't want to negate people that do live paycheck to paycheck, but
right.
many times in my experience, the people that I actually work with aren't living paycheck to paycheck. They are just overspending the boundaries that their income would create for them. They have no idea like how those two numbers mesh and go together. And usually it's their expenses that are outweighing what they're actually earning. And so that's why they're feeling like they're being stretched too thin when it comes to their finances and when they get to the
Mm.
end of the month. Yeah.
And when you say expenses, like the discretionary stuff.
Yeah, and even, I mean, bills, discretionary, just the combination of everything. Usually the
Mm,
discretionary spending obviously is the one that you have more control over. And so
yeah.
that's the first place that we start and sort of reining things in if we need to. But when I work with my clients, it really is about teaching them that spending money isn't a bad thing. It's
Mm,
really just making sure that spending that you're doing aligns with your goals and your values and your priorities so that you can actually feel good about the money that you're spending as opposed to just spending it hoping that the credit card doesn't get declined and then getting to the end of the month and being
yeah.
like, I haven't saved anything. Where's all my money gone?
Mm,
It's gone to my closet. It's going to Starbucks. It's going to Chipotle. And again, those aren't bad things to spend money on, but if it's keeping you from being able to save money, to invest towards retirement, to pay down your debt, then obviously it's going to be time to reevaluate where your priorities are lying at.
mm. So you said starting with finding out where we are.
Mhm.
Well, what comes next after that?
So then what comes next after that, I think that when you understand where you're starting, you can then build a budget based on the information that you've gathered.
Mm,
So the reason why I think the spending audit is so important is because if you are building a budget that's not based on actual data or based in reality or
mm,
where your current sort of like
mm,
standing, then that's when you're going to feel like the budget you're creating is restrictive or it doesn't work for you. And then
mm,
the first time your budget doesn't work, you give up and then you're stuck in the same spot you were in a year later because you just gave up on your budget after one try. And so I think that when you understand your spending, if you were to budget for yourself and say, I want to budget $200 for my budget for the month of October or whatever it is, but you did a spending audit and actually found out that on average you're spending $500 a month on food, obviously going from your normal behavior of $500 on food to this restrictive budget of $200 on food is going to feel like a big weight to carry or a big sort of restriction. And so understanding your spending habits prior to creating a budget, I think is really important so that you can make one that is more in alignment with the way that you actually spend money and then challenge yourself to cut back in areas if you need to so that you can actually be successful with your budget as opposed to just blindly doing it and hoping that it works.
I love that you point out this word, restrictive. It really stood out as you were talking because I think that may be what stops people, or I get a sense of that's what stops people. This feeling of I'm going to be
Mhm.
restricted, I'm not going to be happy. What would you say to that
So I
person?
always, yeah, for sure. I think that unfortunately budgets do have sort of, they've gotten a bad reputation over the years because we hear the word budget and we do think restriction or tightening our purse strings. But I really like to help people challenge their current sort of definition of a budget. I think a budget is simply a plan for your money and how it's going to be
Mm,
spent during a given period of time. Typically, it's
mm,
going to be like 4 month long period. And so when you actually have a plan for your money, as opposed to just letting your money do whatever it wants, that's when you're actually going to feel empowered and proud of the way that your money is being spent as opposed to restricted or you can't have any fun because no one says that you can't build fun into your budget. The whole idea is that we're just creating a plan for your money so that you're actually staying within the boundaries that you have and that you set for yourself, but you're still able to do the things that you want to do. Hopefully, it's all about finding the right balance between the quote unquote responsible adult things, saving and paying down debt, paying your bills and things like that, but then also leaving room for fun, for the vacation fun and for the night out with your friends and for date nights
mm.
with your partner and whatever else it might be. Like we can do, depending on your situation, you can find a balance between the two. And I think the plan is that first step in helping you do that.
That really resonated with me. And I think it's going to resonate with a lot of people. When I think of budget, I'm like, ugh, budget,
Yeah.
But,
Understandably. Yeah.
but when you said plan for your money, that really
Mhm.
resonated with me. And I think it'll resonate with people like, oh, a plan. I like plans.
Yeah.
I want a good plan. I think the best trips, there's some planning involved where we make the most of our time. So I think
Yeah.
when I think about a plan, oh, plan for my money, that sounds lighter. I think it's kind of what
Hmm.
you're alluding to,
For
like this
sure.
lightness. It feels more in control,
Hmm.
like you used the word empowering. It sounds more empowering.
For sure. Yeah, that's the entire goal. I think that for many people, they have this sense that their money is controlling them. And we
Mm,
could very easily flip that script and put you back in the driver's seat when it comes to your
mm,
money. And the plan is one of the best tools that you can have for doing that. So sometimes I don't even use the word budget. Sometimes I call it a spending plan because it sounds a little bit lighter, like you said. It's not as scary or intimidating. It's still the
yeah.
same thing at the end of the day, but I always tell my clients, like, if you want to say spending plan instead, if you want me to say that for you so that you feel better, let me know and we can do that.
I like that. Well,
Mhm.
so you said get started, do an audit, then you said build the plan. What comes after that?
So then after that, it really just depends on what your goals are. Typically, I would go into either teaching about debt payoff strategies or saving, or if you're a little bit more advanced, maybe even covering the basics of investing. I do have clients that, they're debt free, they have good savings, they know all that stuff, but they're completely clueless about investing and building wealth. Because I think that's the ultimate next step is getting on that wealth
Right.
building journey. So it really just depends on sort of like where you're at. But my programs typically run the full gamut from mindset to spending audit, budgeting, saving strategies, debt payoff strategies, investing, an open Q&A session. And then sometimes I work with small business owners too. And we even do like an ask me anything sort of business advice session too, if that's something that they're interested in. So I'm all about sharing knowledge. I feel like I like to give freely in that regard. So, whatever my clients want help with that I can offer guidance with, I'm happy to do it.
Well, you mentioned mindset, and that's something that I wanted to make sure to ask you about because I think
Hmm.
as a coach, I do career coaching and leadership coaching, but sometimes money topics have come up in conversation. I think with coaching,
Hmm.
usually that just all kinds of topics come up. I think mindset around money is so important. And
Hmm.
even you tell me if this resonates with you as the expert, but the mindset can be harder sometimes than the planning, the
Yeah,
spending plan and all of that
exactly.
stuff. Can you talk a
Hmm.
little bit about the mindset
Yeah,
around
for sure.
money?
For sure. Yeah. I totally agree with what you said about mindset sometimes being a lot harder than the actual nitty gritty numbers and
Yeah.
spreadsheets, because for many people, money mindset is interesting because it's one of those things where it's not like we wear a mindset on our sleeves. We can't just, look at our watch and be like, okay, what's my money mindset? It's not something that
Mhm.
is really out in the open.
Yeah.
And if I were to define money mindset, I always say that your money mindset is really just something that encompasses your thoughts, opinions, and just simply the way that you relate to your money and what your relationship with money looks like. And so many times our mindset has been influenced by our upbringing or our experiences or traumas that we've been through or what other people have told us that may not even be true. And all these things really come together and culminate to develop and form our own personal money mindset. And so, in working through money mindset with my clients, some of the things that we do is helping them identify limiting beliefs that might be holding them back when it comes to progressing with their money, helping them write money affirmations to overcome those beliefs. And sometimes simply just having a coach or someone to challenge you on your current beliefs about money is really all it takes to begin to shift those things. I've had clients where they've come to me and they've told me that they have a certain belief about money. I always say, like, who told you that? Who told you it had to be that way? Who told you
Mm.
that that's how it is? Like, what if we believe this instead? And sometimes simply just having that challenge or someone in your face telling you that, hey, maybe there's another way to think about this or approach this is really all it takes to begin to make some changes. And, once you get the mindset work, not, I don't want to say out of the way because that sounds very dismissive, but once you address the mindset work, I think that you said it is so much easier to have success when it comes to like the numbers and the spreadsheets. I think in comparison, the spreadsheets and the numbers are a lot easier than the mindset because mindset is
Mm.
something that is so deeply ingrained and deeply rooted. And so sometimes it's going to take some work on the client's behalf or multiple sessions and talking through things to even begin to crack the surface of improving their mindset. But that's always where I start. And it's woven through everything that we do in our program
Mm.
because I think that when you can begin to change the way you think about money, it really helps you take better initiative and things that you want to do to feel like you're capable of accomplishing things that maybe you thought were possible for you before. It really just touches on so many different areas of your personal finances and your relationship with money. And so I think it's something that's really important to cover with my clients and with anyone that asks me about it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And one thing I like to tell clients is that when I first heard from my coach years ago was that we get to choose our beliefs. And
Hmm.
sometimes we believe the things that we believe are just the way it is.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, what are some of the like top limiting money beliefs that you've come across with your clients?
um, yeah. So I can think of two right off the top of my head that I think are the ones that I am most passionate about helping people sort of overcome. So number one, beliefs around wealth and building wealth and like fears that building wealth changes you as a person or money is the root of all evil, like that saying that we always hear. I've definitely worked with clients who have been uncomfortable with the idea of building wealth or been afraid of what that would look like for them or what that would change for them. uncovering with some clients maybe that they have counted themselves out of raises and job positions because they were afraid subconsciously of earning more money and what that would mean
Mm,
for them. So that's obviously
mm,
like a huge one that, you don't really
mm,
realize how much that impacts you if you have this sort of deep-seated fear of wealth or
mm,
aversion to wealth, and how that not only impacts you, but also future generations and people around you. So that's obviously a really big one to work on overcoming.
mm,
The second biggest one that I see that I think I'm most passionate about helping clients work through is particularly when I work with small business owners. I work with a lot of female entrepreneurs, and the ones that I see there are typically around pricing and value and worthiness, and thinking that
mm,
having a business has to be hard and earning money is
mm,
this big struggle and I have to work all these hours. And that's definitely a mindset thing that I've worked through on my own time, as I begin to see that that is not how it needs to be. Like, it's my mission to tell others that it doesn't have to be hard, that having a business can be fun and exciting, and
mm.
it can light you up, and it can be something that is fulfilling and joyful. So I think those are two of the biggest ones that I see when it comes to clients that I work with, and that I'm most excited to help people work through.
Yeah. As I'm listening to you talk about it, I can think of people in my life who have felt these things, or even me. I think there has been a belief growing up that I saw my parents work really hard for their
Like, you have to
money.
struggle.
Yes. And so I think
Yeah.
that's one that I've worked on actively to try to, there's still some of a little bit in there where
Yeah, of course.
like but I'm very aware of it. And I think that's shared by a lot of people, but also culture too. We have to work really hard. Sometimes the exhaustion is worn as like a badge of honor.
hmm
And so, yeah, I think that's going to resonate with people. And it's interesting that it can impact how we deal with money.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
What else would you say to someone who's wanting to work on their personal finance? What else is something important they should think about?
I would say I do think that the mindset is really important. And so, like, if you are someone who is trying to assess your money mindset or better understand sort of your starting point, I think one of the best things to do is simply to sit down and ask yourself, what do I currently believe about money? What are the beliefs that I
Mm,
have about money? How do
mm,
I feel about earning money and saving money, my
mm,
ability to pay down debt and what that means for me? How do I feel about building wealth? How do I feel about people that already have attained wealth? There are so many
mm,
questions that you can ask yourself that can really bring up different areas of your money mindset that might be blind spots for you. So I think that that is really important. And I think also another mindset related thing is, don't dwell in past money mistakes that you might have made
mm,
before. Don't dwell in the fact that you took out student loans to go to college. Don't dwell in the fact that you didn't start investing until you were 40 years old or whatever it might
mm,
be. I always tell my clients whenever we're getting started, if I ever sense that in them, I always say that, you know what, the past is the past. It might be unfortunate, what has happened, but this is the first step in the new journey that you're taking, in the path that you're taking now.
mm,
Getting on the right track with your money is a step towards becoming the best version of yourself. And I think that if you dwell in the past too much, then you don't really fully engage in the work that we're doing now to get you towards your future. So I
mm.
think that that's kind of not directly related to the numbers and the nitty gritty details of managing your personal finances, but I do think that those sort of things are really important to work through when you're getting on the right track with your money.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I can
hmm
see how that's a huge part of it. That stands out to me, resonates a lot. Well, if someone's thinking, okay, I'm going to journal about my money mindset to start getting
hmm
clear. And then maybe someone becomes aware of kind of some of those beliefs that are kind of maybe holding them back. What's like a small step they could take? Because I really believe change can really start and be long term and lasting when it starts really small and starting
hmm
to take small steps. What's like a small step can help create momentum for someone?
Yeah. I think when you are doing those types of journaling activities and really digging into your money mindset, kind of like we touched on, like, you're maybe working on identifying limiting beliefs that are holding you back from having success, whether it's professionally or personally as it relates to your money. I think that once you've identified those things, the next best step is to give yourself a new belief that you would rather have instead, because it's not like we can just have the limiting belief, identify it, and then be like, okay, I don't want to believe that anymore, and it's gone. I really
Mhm.
think that we
Yeah.
have to retrain our brains in a way and give ourselves new beliefs to sort of attach ourselves to,
Mhm.
as opposed to just hoping that if we wish hard enough that the limiting belief will go away and it'll leave us alone. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
I don't think it works like that. I do think that there is some psychology to it. I don't know all the science and the stuff behind it, but I do think there is a psychology to identifying the limiting belief and then replacing it with a new belief, as opposed to just hoping that it goes away on its own. So I would
Mm,
say a very simple application of this, or like an example of this, would be like, if you're someone who is constantly thinking and believing, I will never be debt free, I am going to die with my student loans,
Mm,
the simplest sort of transition of that belief to more affirming beliefs would be, I will be debt free. It's a simple statement. Maybe you don't believe it right now. It might feel a little bit uncomfortable or something, or like something where you have a little bit of cognitive dissonance about whether or not it's actually possible for you. But I always say that even though the belief feels weird right now, by continually journaling that and reciting that and reading
mm,
that and putting it somewhere on your bathroom mirror so you can see it every day when you're getting ready for your job, I think having that new belief influences your behaviors and your actions. Because
mm,
if you're constantly thinking, I will be debt free, what's going to happen when you're at the register at Target and you're checking out? Are you going to think a little bit more consciously and intentionally about your purchases? Are you going to be more motivated to keep a budget and to save money and things like that? I think that those little small changes in your belief system really impact the way that you actually go about in your daily life too. So I
mm.
think that would be my number one advice for sort of addressing the mindset stuff.
Oh, I love that. That's as a coach, I love that. And I
Uh,
agree completely with that.
yeah.
With clients, I talk with clients about getting clear on what our beliefs are. And then we get to choose our beliefs. What do we want to believe instead? And I think
Yeah.
that's exactly what you're saying now. And I think
Mhm.
you mentioned, you said affirmations. So that's part of this affirmations portion
Mhm.
that you
Yeah, for
kind of
sure.
teach.
Mhm.
And so it starts becoming a part of our identity, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. Totally agree with
Mm,
that.
mm. What else would you like to say to someone who's wanting to work in personal finance? Or like, I have someone in mind right now who's a listener of the show who wants to start investing,
Mhm.
but she is intimidated by it. She's like, I don't know, I have my 401k, but I don't know where to start. And
Yeah.
it's kind of intimidating. So what would you say to someone like her who's wanting to get started in investing?
I think that not even just limited to investing, I think anything that we are intimidated or scared of, even
Hmm.
that sort of emotion typically comes from a lack of education or a lack of
Mm,
knowledge about that topic. It's not
mm,
that we can't invest or that it's hard to do
hmm.
necessarily. It's that we don't have that experience or that skill. I always say that personal finance is a learned skill. And that's why it doesn't make any sense to like cry ourselves to bed at night or beat ourselves up when we're not good at budgeting, because it's a skill that we have to learn. And so the same thing with investing. I always tell my clients that are interested, no one is going to care for your money as much as you do. And so really setting out and taking that initiative to educate yourself on topics that you don't know about really goes a long way. So whether it's doing what I did, like I said, going on YouTube or reading books or going on the forums or listening to podcasts, I think that that is the best place to start, because from there you can make a better decision about what you want to do. Do you want to take a DIY approach where you do it yourself because you've educated yourself and you feel confident that you can do it? Or have you educated yourself to the point now where you feel comfortable hiring a professional that you can actually speak intelligently with, instead of them just
Mm,
telling you what you should do and you have no idea, and then
mm,
you end up in a bad situation later. So whatever path you end up taking when it comes to investing or anything related to your finances, I think is fine. But I think the most important thing is that you do some work, you sort of do a little bit of legwork in educating yourself so that you can make the best decision for you and your situation.
mm. Yes. Well, that makes me think of the book Mindset, where Carol Dweck, the author, talks about this fixed and growth mindset. Fixed
Hmm.
is I'm not good at math. I'll never be good at math.
Hmm.
Growth mindset is I can get better. I can do a few problems every day and learn and get better
Yeah.
at math.
Hmm.
This growth mindset is kind of what I thought of as you talked about that. Like maybe I'm not good at investing. I don't know about investing, but I can grow. I can figure this out and I can
Yeah,
ask for
exactly.
help once I educate myself a little bit enough to learn what I need.
Yeah, I think so. And I think personal finance is so interesting because for so many people, talking about money is taboo or it's uncomfortable. And so we think that we really internalize it and we think that, why does it feel like I'm the only person who
Mm,
doesn't understand how to create a budget or how to invest? Or like,
mm,
why am I seeing all my friends from high school on Facebook buying homes and cars, and I still am stuck in this sort of job where I'm not earning enough and I feel like I'm living paycheck to paycheck? So
mm,
really taking the time to, number one, not care about what you're seeing on social media because it's all facade, number one, but number two, really being in that growth mindset and understanding that you do have the power to change your reality and overcome your current position. But it just takes that initiative on your behalf to be the one that wants to do that and gets to the point where you're sick of being in this sort of fixed place and you want to grow more. I always say like coaching isn't a one-stop shop, a fix all. Like I tell my clients from the very beginning, you get out of coaching what you put into it. And
Mm,
so I'm here to provide you with the resources and the education and to cheer you on and to answer the questions or whatever it might be. But at the end of the day, it's up to you to actually take the advice, number one, and to
mm,
do the work. And so I think that really applies to anything in life, whether it's a career or education, a job, your personal finances, fitness, whatever it might be, you have to do the work, but also not being afraid to seek that guidance, whether it's in the form of YouTube, a book, whatever, or actually working with a coach. I do think that there is a benefit, obviously, in coaching with me being a coach and you being a
yeah.
coach. I'm sure you
Yeah.
agree. Sometimes having that accountability and that support is the switch that needs to be flipped too for some people. Like,
Yeah.
people may be very intelligent, maybe they've read all the books, but it's still not clicking for them. And sometimes having that partner is the solution that they need to. I've definitely experienced that in my time as a money coach so far.
Oh, for sure. Same in
Hmm.
my area. Well, one
Hmm.
thing that it made me think about as you were talking was Brene Brown talks about this, where sometimes when we are ashamed of something, we want to keep it kind of like in this dark corner with no
Hmm.
light, not share with anyone, not tell anyone about it so that no one knows this kind of like thing we're ashamed of. So that I think
Hmm.
sometimes money could probably fall into that category. We don't want
Yeah.
anyone to know. But
Hmm.
when we start being vulnerable or working with someone who we trust,
Hmm.
and kind of letting that light in and not being ashamed of the thing, connecting with people. And even maybe I was thinking about like even connecting with a friend and saying, hey, how do you budget? How do
Yeah,
you
exactly.
working with the coach? Hey, I admit I'm not good at it, but I'd love to learn, right? Or whatever it is.
Hmm.
The shame starts dissipating. It starts becoming not as big of a deal. When we start connecting, when we start not wanting to hide it, we're able to really address it and figure it out. And so
Yeah.
I think kind of what you were talking about made me think of that, where it's like, I think money is one of those things that a lot of people can feel shame around, and
Hmm.
just being vulnerable and asking for help or connecting
Yeah.
with others can make a world of difference.
I totally agree. I think that particularly when it comes to your money, I think it applies to many areas in life, but with
For
your
sure.
money, I think that the silence, the shame, and the fear that many of us feel about our finances is what
Mm,
keeps us stuck. And
mm,
so, one of the ways that I also encourage my clients to sort of get out of that stuck place or that fearful place of not wanting to share with anyone is I encourage my clients to talk about what we're learning together in our coaching program with their friends
mm,
or with their partners. I assign them the homework of identifying who is going to be your accountability partner outside of the work that you do with me. One of the things that I do too, if I sign a new client or we have our first call together, I ask their permission to like do a boomerang and I share it on social media so that they can share it on
mm,
their platform. And it's a simple, fun way of really helping them get more comfortable with even acknowledging that they have done the scary work of beginning to work with a coach and
mm,
showing their community and the people around them that, what, this might be something that you're struggling with too. And look at, I'm setting this example by seeking help, and you can do the same thing too. It doesn't have to be scary. It can be
mm,
fun. It can be empowering. And I think that subconsciously, like that really does a lot for my clients too, where they maybe had been approaching this thing where I'm just going to do it on my own. I'm going to keep it very quiet, very close to my chest, not tell anyone
mm,
until I know that I'm going to be successful. But I think really helping my clients get out of their comfort zone in that regard by like having to share it on social media if they feel comfortable
mm.
doing that, that obviously is a big deal for many
Yeah.
people. I've had clients that have told me, like, I'm super excited to share this with my friends. Thank you for encouraging me to be more
Mm,
open. I've gotten referred clients because I've had clients do that. So it's definitely a win win all around. But I think
yeah.
more so for my clients is just getting them comfortable with being the person in their friend group that can be the go to girl for personal finance advice. That's my goal. I always say that on my discovery calls too. Like, I want to grow a community of self-sufficient, empowered women who
Mm.
are going to be the go-to girls in their friend group when it comes to personal finance related matters.
I love that. Yeah. And I bet when someone is open to sharing and comfortable enough to share, there might be someone who says, I'm struggling. And now I saw that Lupe shared that she's working
Yeah.
with the coach. And so I'm going to reach out or I'm going to ask her
Hmm.
what. And
Yeah.
so I'm thinking of when you throw a pebble into water and there's like a ripple
Ripple
effect.
effect. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
There's a
Hmm.
ripple effect there.
Sure.
Even if they don't work with you, now they felt the
Hmm.
ripple of that. So that must feel really
Exactly.
good too for you.
Yeah. It feels great. Yeah. I love it. It's what I live for with this business, I would say. Of
Well, thank you so much for being here today. If
course.
someone's thinking about working with you or wanting to learn more about you or follow you, where can people find you? How can people work with you? Tell us all the things.
Yeah, so the best way to get in touch with me if you're interested in learning more about coaching or just want to have a chat about money in general is to find me on Instagram. You can find me at millennialmoney.guide. That is millennial with two L's and two N's. That's a keyword just sometimes I always have to say it. So at millennialmoney.guide, you can reach out, DM me, say hello. I would love to meet you there and give you whatever information that is that you're seeking. Always happy to connect on social media.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here today. I know this is going to resonate with a lot of people.
Thank you for having me.